Sodium borate is a salt of boric acid, which is an acid of the element boron, and with the power of chemistry it's possible to turn this unassuming white salt into a versatile metal which has uses in glassware, aerospace, and even in nuclear reactors. Video coming soon. So to start out, I've weighed out around 100 grams of borax. Next I've added some water. And I've cranked up the heat. Then I've added around 37 ml of concentrated hydrochloric acid. What's happening here is that hydrochloric acid is a strong acid, and as we all know, the stronger acid brings out the weaker one out, and thus boric acid is formed along with sodium chloride. Boric acid is much less soluble in water than borax, and thus it will start to precipitate out. In fact, as soon as I've added it, some boric acid crystals already started appearing. Anyway, I've put it in the fridge for the night, and instead of sleeping I've played some Fortnite. After an intense gaming sesh, this is how the beaker looks like now. You can see there's a bunch of crystals of boric acid. Anyway, the solution was filtered through a coffee filter. In the water there is some unreacted HCl and salt, and both are soluble in water. Another cool thing which you can do when you have boric acid is combine it with methanol to produce methyl borate, which burns this really cool green color. So anyway, I've did just that, and here you can see this really beautiful flame. The boric acid crystals were washed with ice cold water to get rid of impurities. But I didn't really have distilled water, which kind of went back and bit me in the ass later, because it contaminated the whole thing with some strange salts. Anyway, right now boron is in the form of this really annoying ion called borate, which can't really be converted to boron. So to proceed we have to reduce the borate ion. To do that I've put a bunch of boric acid on a pan and I started heating it with my Bunsen burner. At first nothing is really happening because not only is it extremely wet, but the surface of boron is preventing the heat of the flame from reaching the rest of the lamp. So to prevent that, I started stirring it with a metal spoon. Eventually the lamp gives way and the additional water starts getting evaporated. As I've heated it, some portions of the boric acid lamp started bubbling, which is a good sign. What's happening here is the boric acid is being broken down into boron trioxide and water. You can see a bunch of steam coming over as the reaction proceeds. Eventually, most of the boron trioxide has crystallized, and you could say that it's basically raw borosilicate glass, but without the silicate part of course. Finally, the boric acid was mostly converted into boron trioxide. However, I was not happy with the amount of the oxide, so I've added more of that boric acid on the cooking pan. And I actually really like how it was searing as if it was cold meat. While I'm heating this, I just cannot express enough how much I like the color of boron ions. It's just such a cool color. After the whole thing was finished, I waited for it to cool off, and might I say that it basically turned my lab into a sauna. Just look at this! Anyway, I've left it for like 30 minutes, and while it's cooling off, hear me out. Hey you, yeah you! Prussian Blue is coming to Discord! You should join my Discord server now! Anyway, I've started chipping off the boron trioxide fragments from the pen, and even some of the paint stuck onto it. The boron oxide basically turned into an extremely hard crystalline mass, which kind of resembles very badly molded glass. Anyway, I've started grinding it using my mortar and pestle. Eventually I said fuck it, I'm not being paid enough by YouTube to grind it by hand, so I've upgraded to a coffee grinder. After finishing, our yield of powdered boron trioxide is 15 grams, which is actually pretty freaking good. Theoretically there should be around 36 grams of boron trioxide waiting in the boric acid in the solution, but it's just way too bothersome to try and recover it. So now it's time to do the Thermite. I've added around 20 grams of magnesium, however I've overshot it by like 30, so I've had to take the excess magnesium without letting in any boron trioxide in the mix because it will be ridiculous. because it would be pretty freaking dangerous to have those two mixed all the time. Basically what we're doing here is a really exotic thermite. Compared to your usual iron oxide aluminum mix, it's quite similar. However, here the predominant metal here is boron. So anyway, this is a little shrine which I built for the thermite to prevent boron metal from splashing everywhere. To light the mix, I'll be using magnesium ribbon. So fire in the hole. It starts off really slow, but then it takes off, just like your usual thermite. Wow, this was so cool. I can't believe this. Anyway, I went in and started breaking up the boron magnesium oxide pile, and I waited for it to cool down. So anyway, this is the slag from the reaction, and I'm adding enough water to cover up the entirety of it. Then I've added some HCl. I've tried to turn on the steering, but sadly the steer bar ended up just having a stroke. The reason why we're using HCl is to react any unreacted magnesium and the resulting magnesium oxide into a water-soluble form. Here's me filtering the acid wash boron into a beaker. This is the final washing where I add concentrated hydrochloric acid. Okay, so this is the part which pissed me off. Even though I've had all of these cool washings, there was still this annoying orange color when heated with a Bunsen burner. But to be perfectly honest, whatever I did, there was pretty much zero I could do. Psych! Actually, I've just used a shit ton more of hydrochloric acid and I finally washed it with ethanol, because I didn't have distilled water. But when lighting it on fire, there was still that pesky orange flame. Well, there was seriously now nothing that I could do. Psych! Nah, I'm serious now. Anyway, I've weighed it out and the wet yield was around 480. However, it was washed with ethanol, which was ignited, so I take it with a grain of salt. That the dry yield would be around 420, funny number. And holy shit, it's actually really close to the expected yield of around 4.6 grams from 15 grams of boron trioxide.